Hi, well, this is Tracy Steckrath, and welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast live edition. And each week we talk to food and beverage experts around the world on their take on what safe, inclusive, and sustainable food and beverage is. Because it's March, this month I am actually focusing on Women's History Month, and everyone that I will be interviewing are women who are kicking butt in food and beverage in their own respective ways. And I'm so excited to be chatting with all of the women that I've lined up. Today is a woman that I met in Italy, listening to her speak on a panel about sustainable meats and how it can improve the sustainability of our meats and our earth at the same time. And I'm jumbling my words now, so I'm just going to introduce Caroline McCann. So much to say. She is a Slow Food International Counselor for Southern Africa. She's a chef with compassion. She's part of Chefs with Compassion, and she's a food sustainability and broadband livelihoods consultant. So hello, Caroline.
Hi, Tracy. So lovely to see you.
Likewise. And so just so everybody knows, that was 2016 when I first heard you speak. And then I saw you again. I went to South Africa in 2017 and saw you and lived with you for a week. And then I saw you again at Slow Food International in 2018. So we need to do it again.
We do. We really do. We've got to be able to move around and share our stories and eat each other's food.
Yes, we do. Yes. Okay, so tell everybody, first of all, what does broadband livelihoods consultant mean? But tell people how you got to where you are, because you started out as a lawyer.
I did indeed. So to answer the first question last, I studied law and practiced law for 7 years and specialized in labor law. So dealt with unions and structuring of companies and that kind of thing. And it was a promise of sleep made by my aunt that had me buy a butchery that I looking back, I still can't believe it. 27, I decided to buy a butchery, knowing nothing about business, nothing about meat, generally didn't cook, didn't understand food, didn't understand flavor, didn't even really know myself. And over the years, from learning about business, I started asking about the meat. And I was horrified to see that actually, especially in South Africa in 2008, we had no choice. We had to buy meat from a feedlot. And it drove me crazy. I couldn't accept this. So basically, my claim to fame is that I then made it my mission to buy directly from small-scale farmers and to promote free-range grass-fed meat, which meant engaging with government, writing the first protocol for fully traced meat from small-scale farmers around South Africa. And yeah, that soon led to me being discovered by Slow Food. And the work that I started doing with Slow Food was outside of all sorts. And yeah, basically from there till here, I've now sold the butchery, which is a new development. And I've been very passionate about the fact that growing food and that first rung of the food economy, sort of your processing, agro-processing stuff, actually holds the greatest potential economically active. And so the broad-based livelihoods is around taking groups of people in very strange and impoverished areas and helping give them the basic skills to grow.
Come on. All right. I don't know if you can hear me or if it's my Wi-Fi. All right.
You're back.
Out there a second. I'm back. Okay. Well, I love the fact that you're giving people the tools they need for their own livelihood and growing their own food. It's so important. And I think COVID has actually helped play a lot into that too, and knowing our farmers and being concerned about buying, food from the grocery store and things like that. So I think that's instituted a lot of that. So I love that. And the one thing when I don't know where we were, but I do remember you had one rancher that you worked with, and you went out to see him and you're like, well, have you ever sprayed your land? And he's like, with what? Right. And his dad, and he was like a 2-generation or 3-generation rancher, and he had never done anything. And so even talking to him about the things that we talk about, he had no idea what it was, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for me, what I've found to be so wonderful and remarkable in this journey, first as the butcher trying to sell good meat, and now lately, is that it's actually against African culture and tradition to get chemicals and to get fancy seeds and to bring African culture to eat where you live, to grow to eat where you live, to grow to eat to thrive where you live. And so, if anything, I think that my faith in humanity, what it is to eat properly, has been restored in the last couple of years doing the consulting work.
That's fantastic. And you travel for slow food. And actually, let's explain to people what slow food is. But you travel around the world for slow food, right?
Absolutely. And again, it just feeds totally into my love and passion, but it's taught me a lot. So Slow Food is an international organization in over 160 countries around the world now. And it's good, clean, and fair food for all, promoting biodiversity. So it's a wonderful organization driven by very passionate people. And because the focus very much is on what is the food that where you find yourself, what is it that defines you, and how do we protect it, and how do we promote it, and then how do we grow it, how do we cook it, and how do we enjoy it. It speaks to me on very many levels, but basically it's doing the work that I believe in.
That's fantastic. And so, as a woman in the food and beverage industry, and then butchery, and then traveling the world talking about it, what has been important to you as a woman in this industry doing that?
So I'm fairly certain around the world, women butchers have a hard time because it's the domain of the man, right? And from what I know in the States, and the few female butchers I know, they've all had similar experiences where you get taken as a joke, like you can't possibly be the person in charge, you can't possibly be the butcher, like where's the man in charge who carries the meat? So it was very difficult to initially trying to overcome that. And then what made it worse is not knowing anything about this industry. So not just trying to fight for street credibility because I can get the hulk of meat around, but because I didn't really know anything about it. And I would say that in industry, in the chef industry, as well as the meat industry, in fact, hospitality generally, there is this idea that women play the service role. You smile nicely and you take an order and you're the face of service, but you're not the face of work because that's not seen as work. And I would say that's probably been the biggest difficult challenge. And then in Africa, it's made even worse because culturally, women who are still menstruating are regarded as children and so have no say. And only postmenopausal women are regarded as elders. So I've had all these interesting challenges.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So at 50 years old, you're still considered a child? Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it's a huge challenge. When we talk about hospitality kitchens, for example, women have an incredibly difficult time because in our context, you automatically must be the cleaner. And so whether you rise through the ranks, and there are some exceptional women. Pinky Maropeng is one person I can think of. And even though she's risen to the ranks and she runs a kitchen like a sergeant major, at the end of shift, there's still this uncomfortable, awkward look by the males to her, as if to say, okay, so you're going to clean now, or so yeah, it's hard.
Wow. So you just said what the biggest struggle was. I mean, that is the biggest struggle. So have you found the joy? What is the joy in all of this that you found?
It sounds horribly egotistical, but I love knowing that after a few years I could walk into a butchery and hold my own and cut as quick, as efficiently, and often better than most of the men. And secondly, yeah, that I can now, like last year or the year before last rather, I was invited to Kenya to address the United Nations on sustainable agriculture for rural communities. And so I took great delight. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Oh, that's so amazing. And when I was in South Africa visiting you, you were holding, which I thought was so fun, you were holding a butchering competition. And you started that, right?
Yeah, I did. So I discovered the World Butchers Challenge, which had started in Australia, between Australia and New Zealand a number of years ago. And I just thought it was the cleverest thing ever to ignite passion and interest in the meat industry, which, again, around the world, we really are struggling. It's not seen as a sexy career. Everyone wants to bang on a computer and, AI this and drones that and robotics this, but no one wanted to cut meat. And so I decided to host a local competition and went about finding local partners. And it turned out to be incredibly successful. The team that won, we went through to the first world champions, a championship that South Africa had taken part in, and came 13th, which wasn't so bad. No. And yeah, we actually held a second round where some incredible young talent we were able to discover. And unfortunately, because of the dreaded corona, World Butcher Challenge was postponed indefinitely. But yeah, the competition's still going on, and there's amazing talent that we're discovering.
Okay, so on that note, this talent of butchering, and when we were in South Africa in 2018, you were on a panel, and there was somebody from Meatless Monday, which I'm promoting in my Eating in a Meeting group, and then a couple of other organizations. That's the only one that I remember. And then you, Sustainable Butchery, which is not completely opposite of Meatless Monday, because they're just asking you to reduce your meat consumption. But a lot of people, because of COVID, have gone vegan. So what is that counter thought process that we don't need to go vegan, we can do it sustainably?
So actually, that was for me a very difficult one, because the person you're speaking about from Meatless Monday is a person I have huge respect for, but it doesn't mean that I agree with what is being promoted. And I understand from, and bear with me here, from the luxury of a first world country where generally things work, where generally you've got a supportive environment that allows people the opportunity to think creatively and to think deeply and philosophically about things like consumption. Coming from Africa, we have a very different experience. And so putting on the lens, if you will, and seeing the world through my eyes is where I'd like the arguments to always be, or how the argument should be held. So the starting point is that African culture is all about the cow. Cattle are not just simply something that we have because we're ranchers. It actually defines who we are. In almost all civilizations around Africa, the cow is seen as a symbol of ancestors. And so if you disrespect a cow, you're disrespecting your ancestors. And that's akin to blasphemy. You don't do that. So when cows are so important to you, immediately the first thing is, well, Meatless Mondays, you're telling us that we can't consume our ancestors, like we always have, like we have to keep peace with the past. The second big thing is that we have one of the fastest losses of biome, the savanna grasslands biome in the world. And more, what scientists are showing is that if we just simply restore the grasslands of Africa, it would have the same impact as restoring the Amazon forest. And there is only one way to restore the grasslands, and that's to have ruminants, i.e. cows generally, but sheep and goats as well, coming together as a herd and mimicking what used to happen in millennia gone by. So as a tight herd, eat the grass, let the manure be with hoof action put into the soil, move off and let the grasses recover. And without that simple process, we do not get to restore our grasslands. Without that, the desertification of the African continent continues at the fast pace that it is. And we don't get to play our part in sorting out the major problems that we have with climate change.
That's so interesting. And, it reminds me of Will Harris in Georgia, who transformed his farm from, originally it was, there weren't any chemicals on it. And then it was, so he's regenerated the soil through the use of the animals and moving the animals from one spot to the other and bringing back that grass as well. So I think that's important to know. And here I'm an inclusive eater or inclusive promoter of you choose how you eat and what you eat. And I would just want to make sure that you don't go away hangry on the table. So I think it's really important to hear both of those perspectives, and it's good to learn that, because we're getting pushed a variety of different messages from all different platforms, and it's hard to determine which one's right and how it goes. But I want everybody to understand that. So
Tracy, if I can, just on that, what concerns me the most, it's less about are you vegan or are you into paleo, or are you into carnivore diet or any of that. For me, the most critically important thing is that our plate determines our reality and determines the success of our world. And so when you pick up your plate and you're required to read ingredients, problem. When you are required to think through substitutes to what is nutritious food, that's a problem. When you're having to spend money that gets consumed by extractive companies, nameless, faceless people, for something as important as your nutrition, the thing you need to sustain yourself, that's where we have our problem. And so as much as people often say, oh, you must hate the vegans, I don't hate the vegans. What I hate is mindless consumption. And, if your choice is to go vegan, amazing, I respect you, but read the packet. Read what's gone into it. Ask yourself, is this actually meeting the ethical considerations that go behind the choices you're making? And same with carnivores. People doing this carnivore diet, is only eating meat truly giving you what's needed in a way that works for the planet, works for the farmer, and works for you?
I love it. And there's a convention that I go to, and there's so many vegan products out there, and it's a lot. It's all packaged food, prepackaged food. And my biggest challenge is that I can't read half of the ingredients on those packages, and they're 25, 30 ingredients long. And I'm like, so my philosophy is that I would prefer to eat 5 ingredients or less if I'm eating a packaged food, sometimes 9. And that doesn't mean when you're making lasagna that you can't use 9 ingredients, because you got to do the spices and the meats and all of that. But, when you're looking at packaged food, agree, when you have to read that label, and some of those words on that label, you don't even know where it came from, because it could be coming from an animal or something, but it's not disclosed.
Yeah, absolutely. And our food is not a chemical experiment. So, right. If you've got to find a chemical to thicken up something or to make it taste like something or smell like something, nature's amazing. If you want it to taste like strawberries, eat the strawberry. it's quite easy.
Yeah. And it does make it hard for individuals who have food allergies. And a lot of, I think food allergies, a lot of is from our environment, what have we done and things like that. But if you can't read the label and it's got a hidden ingredient in there, you know, that's not disclosed because it's in something else, it's really hard.
It truly is. And again, you know, to a large extent, I think that we don't give enough careful thought to people with allergies. You know, there's this whole dismissing, oh, everyone's got an allergy these days. But actually, if you just simply stop, and I think about the time when you stayed with me, Tracy, it was a question of, well, do I have to read the label to see if Tracy can eat it? That really got me thinking about this. And no, if it's fresh from a farmer, if it's direct from someone that I know who's made it, who have engaged with and been part of, then that's food. And it's not just good enough for Tracy and allergies, it's good enough for all of us.
Yep. And that's true. And it does, eating fresh, whole food, plant-based, or, you know, animals, eating that way helps with allergies because you're getting the nutrients you are. And when you buy it from a farmer, the closer you are to that farmer, the more nutritious, nutrient dense that food is, because it hasn't been transferred all over the country, and stored, etc. So it does help a lot. So what words of wisdom did you receive from your aunt, your mom, or your grandmother on life?
Actually, it's my gran.
Okay.
So my maternal gran, she was born and raised in Lebanon, in a small little village, and yeah, like was practiced for many years, even after she left Lebanon. Girls were not sent to school. You didn't need to educate them in that way. They needed to know what to pick in the fields, how to cook it, and how to provide for their man. And so basically grooming for marriage, right? And so my gran, phenomenal woman, landed up eloping with a much older British sergeant, and landed up on the shores of South Africa, where she was promptly treated as not white, and so subjected to apartheid government, separating her from her husband, not speaking English, having to discover food and people and figure things out for herself. And so it was with that background that she raised me to say, enjoy every minute of life as it goes by, which was quickly followed with, what do you want to eat? Because food was the cure for everything.
Well, I love that. Grams are so good about giving advice and taking their experiences in their life and seeing how they can apply it to how the world has changed and what they're, and what they experience, and then pushing us forward. Yeah,
absolutely. And for me, that was the big thing, is that she had arrived in this country, didn't speak a word of the language, and it was literally through food, through things growing in the garden, in the non-white area that she had been forced to live in, that she learned to speak English, and she made friends, and she found a life for herself. So yeah.
Oh, that's so fun. And how long was she in your life?
So she passed away 8 years ago. So she was in my life for a long time. Yeah.
She was. That's fantastic. Yeah. And I remember when I was little, I had 5 great grandparents alive, and I was so proud of that. And my last grandmother passed away 2 years ago. So and she was 97. So it was great to have get that and have that part and have those people in your lives. So what do you look forward to food and beverage in the future?
The thing right now that's truly getting me excited is the work that I'm doing with communities around basic preservation of food and zooshing it up. So today, for example, zooshing. So today I was in an area called Marikana, which is quite infamous. It was the site of some striking workers who were killed by the police, and there'd been terrible discord. But the community has come together and they've started growing amazing produce and an amazing variety. And so the reason I was there was to show them how to dehydrate food, which they could then do different things with. So we started talking, and it was remarkable to just hear the ideas and asking each other, oh, do you remember when we were young? We used to take this and add that and zoosh this together, and there this was. It was delicious. And so what's making me excited is that I think people are starting to embrace the past and remember the past and bring that into food. So that excites me.
That is exciting. And when I was researching some stuff like ancient grains and all the work that Slow Food's doing around indigenous foods, I think that's the same kind of concept. And I think it's really fun because we've lost a connection to some of the things that we used to do and bringing it back.
Absolutely. And again, it goes to food allergies, right? Because the truth is that why is there the sudden spike in food allergies? Well, it's because we've changed our food dramatically. And so somehow if we can start embracing the past and eating the past, it's so good for us all.
Oh, that's so fun. And not necessarily eating, TV dinners that go in the, that no. Eating the food way past, not TV dinner. Okay, so how do you want to be remembered in history?
That's an interesting one, because everything I've done, I've not done it because I'm trying to do legacy stuff. And it's only now that I look back and go, actually, so why am I known as Caroline the Butcher to so many people? And why am I known as Caroline the Slow Fooder, or Ntabiseng, which is my African given name in some of the communities? And so I guess what I'm being remembered for is giving a voice to those who had no voice, so that they could use what they grew to grow into people with respect and dignity in their community.
Wow.
And I think I'm getting there.
That's fantastic. I mean, and that's a good legacy to leave. And that's to me and your boys. That's a good legacy for your boys to learn from you as well. In choosing whatever they choose to do when they, get up and leave mama's house. Yeah.
Don't tell them that. They're not allowed to. They have to stay until they're 40.
Well, I moved back in with my parents when I was 50, so.
Oh, good. You can tell them that.
Do you have any role models?
I do, actually. And I call them girl crushes, because they are women that are phenomenal. And it took a lot for me to learn to speak to heroes. So the first one is a woman called Dr. Anna Trappido, and she's quite a well-known author. She's won international prizes for the books that she's written. And what for me just is astounding, and I find myself to be so blessed that I can call her friend, is that she's been able to have a look at that beautiful juncture of society, sort of sociology, anthropology, and food, and to really make people stop and think about food. And then she's a chef, so then she makes it really yummy, and you just end up licking your plate clean and loving her even more. And the second person is Sarah Frazee, who started Conservation South Africa, and recently started a social enterprise called Meat Naturally. So Sarah Frazee comes from the States, but effectively she's African. I think she wandered, her soul wandered home. And I've done a lot of work with her around rotational grazing for rural communities and unlocking market value chains for them. But for me, what makes her my hero is that she has understood that the world of the future starts today. So those are the two in particular.
I like that. The world of the future starts today, and changing our food system starts today. And it may look like this big laborious thing that we have to do, but every little step that you do, that she does, that I do, can actually help change that future.
Absolutely.
I love that. So I got two more questions for you, and I think part of one of these comes from, in listening to your video on you selling the market, the butchery, and doing what you're doing, but what have you sacrificed personally and professionally at each stage of your career? And I know that part of your reason for doing this was so that you could be with the boys as a single mom, and changing this. So you want to add to that?
No, Tracy, way back when I was actually still in university, I had a professor, one of my law professors, who said to me, in the class, there was a whole bunch of us, and the one was a girl, and she was complaining about how much work there is. And he looked at me and he said to me, "Are you going to complain about how much work there is?" I said, "No." He said, "Okay, well, I'm telling you and I'm telling all the other girls here that you've got a choice. You're either going to be serious about your careers or you're going to be serious about your families, but you can't do both." And unfortunately, that really does seem to be the problem, especially with women, that we are burdened by having to be both, which means that we are burdened by never feeling like we're doing either particularly well. And so the greatest sacrifice for me has been not being present in the true sense for my boys.
Well, I think you have, and you're showing them good work ethic, and you're a good mom. And I since I lived with them for a week, I adore them, and I think they're good boys.
Thank
so
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But I think the work that you're doing and the ethical aspect behind that it will be teaching them well. So
I hope so. I hope they remember me fondly, as opposed to that woman. Gee, we hardly remember her.
No, I think they'll remember you fondly.
Good.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a choice. You can answer either what is your favorite food and why, or if you could invite anyone living or dead to dinner, who would you invite?
Earlier, I thought to discuss who would sit around my table, but actually, I'm going to go with the food.
Okay.
And my favorite food is every single meal that's been cooked for me by an old lady who tells me her story. And that's from something we call skop, which is sheep's head, which I landed up eating for the first time by this ancient lady. She was huddled over her pot and her fingers were gnarled. And she told me about how they used to use the ritual of slaughtering the sheep. And then it was always her desire to finally be old enough to eat the head. And so that was amazing. All the way through to my first Italian meal where I had horse.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm there.
But it was the old Italian man who told me why they eat horses and why they enjoy it that made it such a good meal. So that's my favorite food.
I love that, because food is so much more than just the food. It is the stories behind it and the history. And I think that's a great way to end this. So how can everyone get a hold of you if they want your consulting expertise?
I play a very low profile on social media, Facebook, Caroline McCann. I read a lot on Twitter, but I hardly ever tweet. So I'm on Twitter at Can McCann. And Instagram links to Facebook. So I'm really not there very much either.
All right. Well, they can get a hold of me and I can connect you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for making your mark in the food and beverage world. I think what you're doing is so important to not only Southern Africa, but to the rest of the world. And you've made an impact on me from this first timer to Italy and listening to you speak. And I'm so glad to be able to call you a friend. So Thank you.
Tracy, thank you so much. And I can't wait when you can come back and be with us and eat our food.
I can't wait. It'll be awesome. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to Eating at a Meeting Live. We're here to talk about experts in all things food and beverage. And in March, we're focusing on women who are kicking butt in the food and beverage industry. Tune in to us on all podcast platforms. And in the meantime, stay safe and eat well. Thanks.